winner. Joe Biden is now president-elect of the United States. Good evening, and thank you so much for staying up extra late with us. I'm Carly Willis, filling in for John Acebus. Well, the Associated Press and multiple other news outlets have called Pennsylvania for Joe Biden, giving him the electoral votes needed to win the election. His running mate, Senator Kamala Harris, will be the first woman, the first black woman, and the first South Asian woman to hold the office of vice president. Biden addressed the nation Saturday night, delivering a message of unity and reconciliation to a politically divided America. The president-elect spoke before a joyous tailgate celebration in Delaware. He declared it's a time to heal in America, to a chorus of cheers and blaring car horns.
What is our mandate? I believe it's this. Americans have called upon us to marshal the forces of decency, the forces of fairness, to marshal the forces of science and the forces of hope in the great battles of our time. The battle to control the virus, the battle to build prosperity, the battle to secure your family's health care, the battle to achieve racial justice and root out systemic racism in this country.
Biden turned an eye to governing during his speech, saying he'd announce a COVID task force of advisors on Monday. Meanwhile, President Trump is back at the White House this evening. The president spent most of the day at his golf club in Sterling, Virginia. Trump has not yet conceded the race and announced in a written statement that his campaign will move forward with a legal fight. KSN's Alexis Padilla sat down with our own political analyst. Alexis, what can Dr. Jeff Jarman tell us about this historic election?
Carly, Jarman says this is not a traditional presidential election year. Without a concession speech, it is adding more challenges for President-elect Biden to face.
Once an election is called, it really marks a moment in time where we change from campaigning to a move toward governing.
A transition currently on hold for President-elect Joe Biden, as President Donald Trump and his administration wait to concede and file lawsuits.
From whether or not he will be victorious in those lawsuits and undo the election outcome in multiple states, that's a very tall order.
While it's been mentioned, KSM political analyst Jeff Jarman says the likelihood of reaching the U.S. Supreme Court isn't strong. At
this point, there hasn't even been sufficient evidence of actual voter fraud, and definitely not evidence on a magnitude that would undo multiple state outcomes.
The 2020 presidential election setting records in votes cast for both candidates.
I think it's a sign of the real division in our politics and in our culture.
Jarman says Biden's biggest challenge will be uniting Americans.
He faces a divided country, a divided Congress, and a bitter politics that will take a real effort to try to overcome.
Jarman says Biden's first 100 days in office will set the tone for the country as he attempts to focus on issues that will bring people together. Alexis Padilla, KSN News 3.
Alexis, thank you. When news broke of the presidential election being called for Joe Biden, folks in cities across the country hit the streets to celebrate. In San Francisco, people stood on street corners holding signs, waving flags, and cheering. People gathered in Phoenix, Boston, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Philadelphia, and other cities. Naturally, not all are happy with President-elect Biden's presumed victory. Backers of President Trump also rallied to show their support. This was the scene in Lansing, Michigan this afternoon. As you can see there, a large crowd gathered outside the state capitol with many waving Trump banners and flags. There was a similar, just smaller demonstration here in Wichita. Supporters of President Trump gathered outside the Sedgwick County Courthouse. The crowd could be heard chanting 4 more years and Trump 2020. One supporter we talked to echoed the president's allegations of large-scale voter fraud.
And I 100%, from all the evidence I've seen, I have tons of evidence, and so does the courts, of all sorts of mail election fraud.
The Federal Election Commission says there's been no evidence of fraud in the election. And stay with KSN as we continue to follow President-elect Joe Biden's presumed election win. We'll bring you updates on air and online at ksn.com. Well, moving to a race here in Sedgwick County, we've been closely following. Tonight, we're hearing from the Democratic Party after Sarah Lopez took a 125-vote lead over incumbent Michael O'Donnell in the race for Sedgwick County District 2 Commission seat. The party's chairman says they're excited, but the race is not over.